Hello and welcome to the FPL Stats Fix with me, Tom Campbell. Let's get into it for Game Week 24. Good morning everyone and welcome along to the second of the Fantasy Football Stats Fix. With me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC. Now I should say straight off the bat that actually this game week is still ongoing. It's been an absolute mammoth ride, as I'm sure it's been for everyone. There's been hardly any points scored for anyone seemingly, so kind of an interesting week to get into. And actually there is still that one remaining fixture, which still seems an awfully long way away, doesn't it? But hopefully your week hasn't been too bad. Mine certainly has, though as I say, we do still have that one remaining fixture, and I'm sure we're all looking for a really positive bounce from the new manager arriving at Watford. Mr. Roy Hodgson is back at the helm of a Premier League club. I think he's 74 years old, so congratulations to Roy, and let's see how he gets on as he tries to steer Watford away from their relegation troubles. So in terms of today's video, what I thought I would look to do is focus in on potential transfers as we look forward. And the way that I wanted to do this today was to start by looking at the fixture analyzer and see, in terms of Fix's algorithm, what they're recommending from both an attacking and defensive perspective for the next series of games, or game weeks I should say, bearing in mind that certain teams blank, as we know, and see whether or not we can augment that with looking at some statistics to basically focus in on the teams that have been identified as having positive fixtures, and really drill down and see if there's any gems that we can uncover there. So the start point of today's video was to reduce the game week range. I wanted to look just at the next four fixtures rather than beyond that. As I thought, in terms of selecting players from game week 24 onwards, we would be looking for returns within that sort of shorter range. So reduce the game week range from 24 to 27. And then what I've done is actually focused in on defense difficulty rather than attack, although we will come on to attack later on in the video. And I've just filtered that by overall now to see which of the teams have the most favourable fixtures according to the fantasyfootballfix.com algorithm. And you can see there the top six sides are West Ham, Palace, Man City, Southampton, Villa and Man United respectively. And that's going to make up the feature, or the focus I should say, of the first delve into the stats from those teams. So effectively what I thought what managers would potentially be looking to do is, when they're making their transfers, if you're looking at potentially buying in a new defender or defenders for your squad, whether or not you're on wildcard or just making those one-off transfers, my advice would be, based on this recommendation, to focus in your attention against those six teams. Now clearly you can see the fact that Man City are there is no great surprise, as they have been so dominant from both an attacking and defensive perspective over the last multiple game weeks. I know they had a slight slip up on the weekend against Southampton, but they were still impressive in that game. But the other teams I think are quite interesting in terms of having the likes of West Ham, Palace, Southampton, Villa, less so Man United in terms of the price points associated with those. So there may be some options there, and we'll start to take a look into those. Once I've done that, what I actually did was to reduce the analysis down a touch, or focus it in and hone it a little bit further, and actually omitted Man City and Man United so that we could really focus in on the budget players. So that was the first part there. Those are the six teams that we're going to focus on from a defensive perspective. What I then did is, within the OptaStat Sandbox tool, I've reduced the game week range here from game week 19 through until where we're at currently, to make it sort of more relevant to recent form, and also toggled to look at, or rather kept it at, player stats. I think last time we spoke we were talking about team stats, so we've already done the team analysis by looking at the fixture analyzer, and then as I say, reduce the game week range rather than looking for across the whole season. I thought it would make more relevant sense to reduce that and focus in on more recent performance. Then I've just limited the teams to the ones that we just identified. So the 6 teams that we're interested in, set those, you can unselect all, and then just focus in on the teams that you're interested in, setting the positions to defensive players for this particular suite of analysis. And then I've gone to per game as well. So effectively what we're saying here is these are the teams we think have the best upcoming fixtures in terms of potential clean sheet points. I'm identifying defenders who've performed and looking at how they've performed recently. Can't give you an exact number because there have been some double game weeks in that, but since game week 9, since and including game week 9. And then the stats that we get there at a key level are pretty interesting anyway. And straight away you can see some names that may sort of not have been on your radar. Obviously, I don't include Cancelo in that. He's been, sort of ever present in many FPL managers' teams, and rightly so, for a long period of time. But the likes of Perode, are we pronouncing it? I guess, from Southampton. I watched the Southampton game and he was impressive defending on that left-hand side. So straight away here you can see in terms of the key stats that we're looking at here from a Optastat sandbox perspective, you start to identify that he may be one that would be of interest to you. And you needn't check the fixtures as you've already identified that they are favourable. And then you can start to move on to the likes of the Aston Villa defenders, for example. So clearly we know that Matt Target, because we've extended the range, would have been playing further back, but now Luca Dean has signed and he's already been impressive. So he is coming into the thoughts as well, and you can see there the price points there are actually lending themselves to sort of making use of sort of more budget transfers, which would potentially be something that you're interested in. In terms of the stats that we like looking at, I've actually built out some tables as well, which we can take a look at in a moment. Defensive wise, if we have a look here as well, shots in the box conceded. This is the type of thing that I would recommend doing at a team level rather than focusing in on the individual. So I wouldn't necessarily use this particular set of stats when looking at defenders at an individual level. I think actually that lends itself more to teams. I would be more looking at the sort of key metrics here that we were on previously and looking at, say, total shots, for example, which is what I had it filtered on originally. And you can see there that per game, having more than one shot per game from a defender is, relatively speaking, really impressive. So that would be the sort of thing that I would be recommending would draw your interest. And you can see that those are the players that are standing out from the pool of teams that we're interested in. I found that quite interesting that actually Southampton do have a player there that is featuring relatively high in the attacking stats, which is quite interesting. What I did subsequent to that, and this is exactly the same approach, is to keep the game week range the same, but actually just omit Man United and Man City respectively. The thinking there would be that if you're interested in identifying more sort of budget players, then their price points don't really lend themselves, Diego Dalot notwithstanding, to that. So reaching down into the information now a little bit further, Aaron Cresswell stood out to me, and I think that will become apparent when we look at the stats, the table that I created separately. And this is where you start to see the likes of some other players who you mightn't have spotted previously. The likes of Matty Cash, for example, Tyrick Mitchell as well. These are players that are actually performing well from the pool of game weeks that we've identified, and you can filter your information on various different things. Attempted assists, I think, is what I had that set on previously, because avenue to points from an attacking perspective, particularly from the fullbacks, would be something that we'd be looking at there. Matty Target again lost his place now to Luca Dean, but Luca Dean does indeed feature at 5.1 million. Aaron Cresswell, I think, is a really interesting option there that won't be on many people's radars if you're looking for a bit of a differential. That would certainly be something that I would be keen to investigate further. And then the likes of the Southampton defenders, as I say. Kyle Walker-Peters, I think obviously his fantastic goal against Man City will have influenced that, of course, but another player that would come into the thought process there along with, as I say, Tyrone Mitchell. I actually then created my own table. So that's the off-the-shelf offering that Fix offers from the OptaStats sandbox, which I think is interesting and useful in of itself. But using the custom stats builder, I then built out a table, and I have made this public, guys. So if you do want to check this out within on Fix yourselves, you can do that. This is a table I called Defenders with Attacking Prowess. So again, I focused in on the teams that we identified previously, i.e. those that featured top of the defensive fixture analyzer. I looked at the last 6 game weeks here in terms of how they've been performing, and pulled out what I thought were 11 kind of key stats as well. So you can see the teams there that I'm identifying and using defenders only. Again, I'm focusing in on averages per game. And again, this will be a lot of the same information, but that should help confirm your thought process when you're looking to select your players. I really like the expected FPL points, which is what I had that filtered on originally, in terms of each game, what you'd be reasonably expecting or would have expected over the last 6. And of course, you can see there is a Man City dominance here, which you would expect from how well they've performed. But again, Luca Dean has featured consistently through all of this information. Yes, it's across 2 different teams, but if anything, that backs up the assertion that he's just a good player and a good fantasy Premier League asset. You start to see the likes of Aaron Cresswell feature again. Jan Bednarak, the thing that would attract me there would be that price point of 4.4 million. And there are various other metrics that I've pulled out here as well. You're not expecting huge numbers from defenders, but if I take a look at shots, for example, this is when we start to see Perrault, let's call him Perrault, feature Luca Dean again. So he really has stood out, hasn't he, from the analysis I've been doing here in this video. Jan Valery target, this is becoming a little bit more problematic in terms of the reliability of selection for fullbacks, particularly Matty Target and Jan Valery. I think there's some rotation there, but it's the sort of thing that you would be able to say with confidence that of the teams that have been identified as having positive defensive fixtures, these are the ones who are lending themselves from a predictive analysis perspective to have more chance of returning from an attacking side. I really like attempted assists as well. So XA, I think, is a well-known approach that mimics the expected goals philosophy. Attempted assist is something that Fix offers as well. So if you know that Luca Dean, Luke Shaw, Matty Target, Aaron Cresswell, etc. are attempting 2 assists per game, relatively speaking or comparatively speaking, that should be favourable compared to the other defenders or the peers of the cohort that we're looking at. So those would be the names that would be leaping out at me, and they've been consistent. So when we do analysis like this, actually seeing those names repeated is exactly what you want. So from my perspective, I'd be really encouraged to be making that Luca Dean recommendation from the teams that we're interested in. And that kind of concludes the defensive analysis. Again, I honed in originally on those 6 teams, then focused in more on the cheaper teams, and then widened it out to look at my own custom stats using the, I think, frankly, awesome custom stats builder tool on fantasyfootballfix.com. So smash a like on the video if you think you're going to go and have a go at using that tool and build your own tables. And as I say, if you don't want to and you want to make use of this, I have made this one public as well. So the next part was to think, so that kind of covers the thought process around selecting defenders as we look onwards into the upcoming game weeks. I then did a similar approach, but you do need to tweak the analysis subtly to focus in on the attacking output. That's not to say that defenders can't pick up attacking points. Clearly, we've just been looking at that, but the algorithm and the predictive element of fixtures will differ slightly when you're thinking about attacking returns, because of you might be playing a team that, say, defends absolutely expertly but has all the bite of a basking shark, for example. So that's why this can differ. So the game range, again, I've kept to 4. because I think from a selection of players that you'd be looking to do, you would actually be looking to get returns within that particular range. I've then filtered to attack difficulty rather than defence difficulty. And again, we're just going to look at the top 6 teams here again. So there are common themes. I'm a West Ham fan, so it's nice to see them at the top of the billing there. West Ham, Man United, Aston Villa, Man City, Newcastle and Southampton respectively. And you can see the fixtures there that the Fix algorithm is identifying as being favourable from an attacking perspective. So, playing Watford at home, yes, I've mentioned the new manager bounce, but I think I'm right in saying that it's sometime in 2020 that they last kept a clean sheet in the Premier League. So that's a reasonable fixture to target, you would think. So once you've identified those 6 teams, or however many teams you're interested in, and I've limited mine to 6, then it was the same sort of approach. So using the stats sandbox, limiting the Gameweek range again to from Gameweek 19 onwards, home and away. Instead of looking at just defenders here, I've included the midfielders and forwards. Primarily, that's what you'd be looking for the last 2, but defensively, you can still expect attacking returns on occasion. And then I've reduced the teams down to the 6 that we're interested in as well. And again, looking at per game. Now, clearly, with including the likes of Man City and to a lesser extent, I guess, Man United, you're expecting the bigger names to feature. But Emu Buendia is a name that features as we see as we go through this. And again, we've got mix between midfielders and forwards. And I found that quite interesting, actually. He's a player that I think some people would have had a few concerns as to whether or not there would have been space for him in the Villa team with the likes of Coutinho joining Steven Gerrard's sort of revolution there. But he's actually been really impressive and he's upped his game and it looks like he might be a viable asset at just 6.2 million. So there are a ton of different stats that you can focus in on here. I like looking at things like XG and shots, for example. So let's filter on XG per game. And the returning Riyad Mahrez, he's a fantasy Premier League darling when he plays. I think obviously we've all been stung in the past with the phenomenon that is Pep Roulette. But we know that as and when he plays, he does get chances to return points. So you need to take the minutes, which you can see here. This is kind of making my point. Yes, he's been at AFCON, but minutes, a surety of minutes is always a concern with him. Jarrod Bowen, that is not the same case. I think a lot of players will have, or managers will have him in the team already. 6.8 million is still a very affordable price if you haven't. And then you start to scroll down and you start to see names that actually you mightn't necessarily have expected. For example, Joe Willock. Now, I'm not professing that based on this alone you would look to bring Joe Willock in, but it does start to give you an indication as to the likelihood of returns based on particular metrics. So I'm going to have a look at goal threat here, and I'm going to have a look at I want per game and I want in the box, and this is the name that was sort of leaping out to me. So there was a lot of humour when Chris Wood signed for Newcastle recently. I think based on the assertion that Newcastle were linked with names like Kylian Mbappe and Robert Lewandowski, for example, and they've arrived with the most expensive over 30 player in the history of the Premier League in Chris Wood. Look, I mean, he's one of those players that's not going to necessarily set the world on fire in terms of massive hauls, but he has consistently scored in the Premier League, and the fact that he's even in a Burnley team which doesn't threaten many, he's still actually getting lots of shots in the box per game comparative to this cohort, and that's continued into the the initial stages of his Newcastle career at 6.7 million, and we know that there have been a dearth of strikers to choose from. I just found that really interesting to actually consider that Chris Wood is featuring there. Jarrod Bowen, Riyad Mahrez, Cristiano Ronaldo, more obvious, I guess, players to be thinking of. Then you actually get down and start thinking, okay, the likes of Ollie Watkins with Aston Villa sort of moving away from selecting 2 up front and it not really working the dynamic between Danny Ings and Watkins in the team together, not being particularly sort of generating the returns that you want, there's a chance that he may solidify that spot. Obviously, there's a case that Ings could threaten that, but these are the sorts of things that you might want to start thinking about as you delve into the analysis a little bit more deeply. And what I did off the back of that was to build out my own table again. So rather than using the out-of-the-box one, which I think gives you a start of a 10, I then used the same selection in terms of the teams that we're interested in, looking at the last 6 game weeks again only, showing averages per game. And I pulled out 13 different stats as well. So again, Fix has just a ton of stats that you can choose from, that I showed on the last video on the live stream. And by all means, look to supplement that. Again, I've made this table public, so attacking standouts last 6, you can take a look at those. And the idea is I will change that week on week when we look at the fixture analyzer, because that will obviously change, and the teams that you should be targeting to select from will change, but the table will be there for people to use on fantasyfootballfix.com. And let's filter this on something different. So in terms of, I did reduce the, or ensure that the players that we're looking at, they must have played at least 90 minutes in the last 6 as well. So minutes per shots probably isn't that helpful, because you would have had to, if you had no shots at all, then you're going to have 0 there. So that's not actually all that relevant. Let's do attempted assists again. And here is a name which is coming back to the fore. So Kevin De Bruyne, just a vast amount of your budget, isn't it, at 12.2 million? But he is really starting to return now. I take a look at his actual information. You know, he's just starting to pick up these returns. What have we had? 7, 8, 2, 11, and 8 over the last 5. He's starting to hit his straps now, isn't he? But that is an awful lot of budget to spend. I'm not going to tell you not to. I think Kevin De Bruyne is the best midfielder in the Premier League. So, you know, it would be crazy to say it's not a good investment, but it is an awful lot of budget. So that does lend itself to, you know, giving you some confidence that your money is being wisely invested. In terms of the expected FPL points, though, he's not featuring at the top there, which I think is perhaps more telling. The highlighted players, just in case you're not aware, these are the players that I have in my team. So that's a bit of a humble brag then, although I'm not doing particularly brilliantly this season. But these are the sorts of players. I always find it interesting. Mahrez always features on this metric around expected FPL points. When he's picked and Pep selects him, you've got confidence that he's going to have a chance to return points. It's just that selection quandary. So that's what you need to balance your thought process out there. But Riyad Mahrez is a name that we've seen feature consistently. Nice to see Luca Dean as well in amongst all these big midfielders and forwards. You know, even the defenders from the likes of Man City. You've got Luca Dean. Well, Prowse is quite interesting as well. But Luca Dean, he came up in the defensive analysis section of the video, and clearly features overall as well from an attacking perspective. So definite recommendation there. The last section that I did actually was to reduce that pool of teams. So rather than looking at including the likes of Man City, who actually, as I said, with Kevin De Bruyne, I said that, omitting the Champions League side, no Man United haven't qualified yet, but they're one of the teams that has very expensive players. So I've reduced that down now, pulled out similar suite of stats, not identical but similar, just to get an idea here. And I'm going to look at a few different ones here to see if there's anything we can glean. Shots inside the box, average per game. Chris Wood, again, featuring there at the top. And it gives you a kind of barometer there against what kind of constitutes being good. Jared Bowen being in amongst the forwards is exactly what you want to see from your midfielders as well. Emi Buendia is a name there. And I think this is quite encouraging as well. Brozier from Southampton, really impressive forward on loan from Chelsea, and still priced at just 5.2 million. So if you're looking for that kind of make weight or means by enabler, I guess, to free up funds, then Brozier would be someone from a shots inside the box per game metric that you'd be quite confident that he's going to repay you on that basis. Let's have a look at shots overall. I suspect these will be very, very similar. Yeah, a lot of the same sort of names then as well. creativity as well. I really like the attempted assists, as I mentioned. And this kind of backs up my point earlier about Buendia. The fact that he scored in the last game with a really clever header was great. Not expecting towering headers from a player of his size necessarily, but he's playing well. He scored and he's clearly still creating lots of chances. Luca Dean has been a name that's featured throughout this video, so again, he would be someone that I would recommend. But that's the sort of thing that I think you should be looking to do as you look to select your players during this long, protracted winter break. And what I would say is that the tools over on fantasyfootballfix.com will help you to do that in the ways that I've described. So my recommendation is that fixture analysis should be your start point to identify the teams that you're interested in selecting players from. Once you've done that, you can really then just sort of drill down into the intricacies of the stats from those players in the ways that I've described, and hopefully that will help you select your players both from a defensive perspective and an attacking perspective as we move forward. So thanks very much. Do please let me know in the comments below whether or not you found this interesting, whether or not it's useful, if there's any other stats you'd like me to include ongoing. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com for all your FPL stats and insights on fixture analysis. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.